Without your love, slave to the darkness, if it wasn't for the cross. You have won me with your kindness. Chase me down when I was lost. And where would I be if it wasn't for the cross? And hallelujah, thank you, Jesus. I was a prisoner, now I'm not. With your blood you bought my freedom. stripes I'm healed. By your death I live. The power of sin is overcome. It is finished. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. I was a prisoner. Now I'm not. With your blood you bought my freedom. Hallelujah. For the cross. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus. I was a prisoner. Now I'm not. With your blood you bought my freedom. Hallelujah. For the cross. Hallelujah.
Give the Lord some praise right now. Hallelujah, Jesus. Lord, we love you, Lord, and we thank you for the blood. We thank you for the power of the blood. Hallelujah. There's nothing more mighty, nothing more stronger than the power of the holy blood. Hallelujah, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus. I wonder if somebody today could give a shout of praise to God for the blood. Covered all your sins, covered all your imperfectness in his despite, in his perfectness. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Ephesians 1:7, it says, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins according to the riches of his grace. The blood is so powerful, folks. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. At this time, we're going to go before the Lord in prayer. We have some needs today. Having faith that they're going to be healed and be helped out. For healing, we have Sister Regina Todd, and comfort for Sister Tiffany Hoskins' family. We have comfort for the Minton family, victory over this coronavirus, and God's blessing on Israel and USA. And in your needs too, an unspoken request by a raising of a hand. We know a God that can do this mightily, faithfully. We're going to believe in his works and on his blood. If you would pray with me right now. Lord Jesus, we love you, Lord. We thank you for all that you do. God, Lord, help us out in this time of need and a time of trouble, Lord. God, we know that you can do anything that we ask, and above all that we ask, you can do it, Lord. God, you say you ask and you shall receive, Lord, and we're sending up our asking right now, oh Lord. God, come down upon our situations right now and turn it around, Lord. Lord, heal these needs that we have before you today, oh God. Lord, in the mighty name of Jesus, we pray, Lord. If you need a touching hand on your laid on your head by the elders here, and Pastor, come and get it prayed for.
Oh, the blood of Jesus. Oh, the blood of Jesus. Oh, the blood of Jesus. It washes white as snow. washes white as snow. I'm so thankful for the blood of Jesus. I'm so thankful for the blood of Jesus. I'm so thankful for the blood of Jesus. It washes white as snow. Oh, the blood of Jesus. Oh, the blood of Jesus. Oh, the blood of Jesus. It washes white as snow. Oh, the blood of Jesus. Oh, the blood of Jesus. Oh, the blood of Jesus. It washes white as snow. I'm so thankful for the blood of Jesus. I'm so thankful for the blood of Jesus. I'm so thankful for the blood of Jesus. It washes white. It washes white. It washes white as snow.
Hallelujah, Jesus. Hallelujah, Jesus. Lord, you are worthy, God. God. Praise. Yes. Praise God. Before we're seated, let's give another praise to the Lord. Amen, amen. God bless you as you're seated. I want to encourage you, as we have since the very start, to continually strive to move from fear to faith. We exercise faith in every little bit of our life. Somebody said, well, we pray over our food, and that is an exercise of faith, and that is very, very true. Not only are we thanking the Lord for the provision of the food, and not only are we praying for Him to that He may sanctify the food, make it ceremonially clean, but we're also believing Him that the hands of the preparer, the hands of the cook, be it a family member or a chef at a restaurant, we're praying that the Lord will protect us from any infection from that person that prepared it. And it goes even farther back than that. We're praying that the Lord will protect us from any infection regarding the handling of canned goods or produce at the store by stockers. We're believing that God will protect us from any infection from farmers and farmhands and truckers and train employees, all the entire food supply, all the way back. We are trusting in faith that the Lord will help us, will protect us. And I want to encourage you, do not give in to fear. Move from fear to faith. Amen. And so in that regard, we certainly are thankful to see all of you here. We do not pass any judgment on anyone that for whatever reason, be it concern, legitimate concern, or just simply respect to requests from their boss or their job or their situation, whatever it is, anyone who does not yet feel comfortable being with us, we do not pass any judgment. And you've heard me from the start say that we as believers are not to judge one another if someone is wearing a mask and you're not. don't pass judgment. If you're wearing a mask and someone else is not, don't pass judgment. But the bottom line is that we are here worshiping in faith. Those who are watching by way of live stream are worshiping in faith. Amen. We have the wonderful privilege, and what a great thing this is, that the governor saw fit, looking at the numbers, looking at the lowered rates of infection, looking at all the details, hearing from all of his specialists and advisors. The government saw that Mother's Day was coming, and the governor saw this and recommended that churches let their reopening begin on this day, on Mother's Day. And I'm so glad I know there are some mothers that we honor you where you are watching by way of live stream, but we're so thankful to have quite a few of our mothers here with us, and we honor you on this special day. We do many things that are very, very important tokens. Very, very important tokens. Let me illustrate to you the difference between a token and a universality, okay? Tithing is a token. If we weren't practicing an important token regarding tithing, we would give 100% of our income to the Lord. Tithing is a token. The Bible calls water baptism a token. The Bible calls circumcision, fleshly circumcision of the Jewish people in the Old Covenant, a token. It's just because we say it's a token does not mean it's not essential. Doesn't mean it's not important. Water baptism is absolutely essential, and it is a token. For them, physical circumcision, fleshly circumcision, was absolutely an essential token of their covenant, but it is a token. The concept of a token is seen in the fact that we stand for the reading of a scripture, but we remain seated later while other scriptures are read. It doesn't mean that original standing wasn't important. The fact that we sit later, it means that we gave a token. There are many aspects of our life that are important tokens, even essential tokens. And today, I'd like to ask you to do that token twice. Once for a reading of verse now, and later when I'm getting ready to preach for another verse. But would you rise in honor of the reading of the word of the Lord as we read our featured verse from our bulletin today, Proverbs 31:28 regarding Mother's Day. I'm going to try to get through this Mother's Day service without breaking down. I may not make it. Her children arise up and call her blessed. Her husband also, and he praiseth her. Amen and amen. Before we're seated, would you join me in giving a great applause of appreciation for all of our mothers? Amen. Amen. Thank you for rising in honor to those ladies and for rising in honor to the reading of the word of the Lord. I do want to mention that today at 11:30 a.m. on News Talk WAJR 103.3 FM, our regular weekly radio broadcast is scheduled to air. And we have selected an interview that I did with my precious departed mother. And what great wisdom she bestowed in that interview. And our radio broadcast will air that wisdom from her out across an area covering some 13 to 15 counties of north central West Virginia today. And it is so fitting that her voice will go out over the airways on Mother's Day. I do also want to honor some regarding natural birthdays and spiritual birthdays. Our bulletin, as you know, at the request, at the suggestion of guidance from our headquarters, we've done several things in compliance with suggestions and guidance from headquarters and others. One of them is we've removed every other row of seating in order to give more distance for while we're worshiping together. We're also asking you to be very aware and cognizant of anything that you touch that someone else has touched, to sanitize your hands before and after. Handheld things are not being passed around. We're being careful with microphones and washing them between and so forth. We do all of things. We do these things not out of fear, but out of respect and to show deference. But with regard to all of this, we're not handing out a physical printed bulletin for at least the next little while. And we're also taking suggestion from headquarters that we not separate into Sunday school classes. So we'll be all staying in together, certainly at least today and next Sunday for at least a 2-week period, and we'll analyze it after that. And so I'm reading from the digital distribution of our bulletin, which was emailed out by PDF. And if you haven't looked at it yet, you can look at it in your email later. And if you're not on the list of receiving those emails, please let me know and we'll make sure that you're added. The natural birthdays coming up on the 13th, just 3 days from now, the precious mother of my wife, Sister Danya Mullins. And so you can probably congratulate her. And not only do we give an applause to her now, but you can congratulate her on Facebook. She is on there. And then on the 15th, just 5 days from now, our beloved and wonderful Sister Cindy Murphy. And it is so good to see you here today. And then coming up on the 16th, just 6 days from now, our precious son, Gavin Joseph. And I'm looking for him. Oh, there he is. We are so thankful for him. And so join me, please, in honoring these on their birthday. Let's sing to them for their birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, God bless you. Happy birthday to you. Amen. And then we want to congratulate some on their spiritual birthdays. Today is the day, on the 10th, from back in 2009, Brother Jonathan Sutton. And then on the 15th, 5 days from now, we have not one but two spiritual birthdays. The first of them dating from back in 1983, Sister Diana Todd. And another of them dating from way back in 2002, Brother David Ramsey. So let's sing to them in honor of their spiritual birthday. Oh, happy birthday, birthday to you. May you feel Jesus near every day of the year. Oh, happy birthday to you. Oh, happy birthday to you. And the best year you've ever had. Amen. Amen. Pardon me there. I think I started off in the wrong key, and I don't know why that happened. It doesn't usually happen, but I was able to get on key with you all there. Amen. And so we again want to say happy Mother's Day to all of our mothers. And we're making a bit of an exception. I know it's an exception, and you can sanitize your hands later in accordance with respect to the guidance. We are handing out one thing today, and it's a token of appreciation for our mothers, and it is a beautiful yellow rose. And so I want to ask all of our mothers, if you will, to come and join us in the front. We want to honor you today and give you this token of appreciation. It is just a token, but it is an important token. We love and appreciate all of you so much. Come, if you would, to the front and allow us to honor you. You can maintain spacing as you do, and we want to hand out these flowers as a token of our honor for you and esteem for you and love and respect and appreciation for you. Let's give them another hand of applause and appreciation. Don't forget, Sister Barbario is in the back, and we can get to her. And we're honoring also those that are watching by way of live stream. Thank you for all that you do as a mother. We appreciate you so much. Sister Brandy's coming. She needs... I have been instructed to give some time here to our Ladies Ministries officials who are coming to say something about Mother's Day.
Well, good morning, everyone. So I asked Brandy what she wanted to do, and she said she wanted to be the arms and the strength in this, so I get to speak. So we'd like Sister Joseph to come. And this will sound weird, but she don't feel she deserves this, which makes it that much more that she does deserve it. She is a wonderful woman, and I've been taking this online class, and I've learned something, that we're all not perfect. And if you think you are, then you need to be at this altar. And Jesus is the only one that is perfect. And is she perfect? No. Am I perfect? No. But she is a godly woman, and she does wear a lot of hats. And she does it to the best of her ability. Does she please everybody? No. Do I please everybody? No. But that's impossible. But what I do know is one trait that I wish I had of hers is her patience and her grace. She's soft-spoken. She doesn't demean anybody. She doesn't talk harsh to anybody. She makes excuses for them if they do. And she controls her tongue. And I wish I had that ability. And I love her, and I consider her a dear friend, and she does deserve this. And I just want to tell you how much I love you, and the church loves you, and this is from us.
It looks really heavy. Y'all are so sweet, so kind to me. I do not feel like I deserve any of that, the stuff or the words or all of that. But I do really very much appreciate it. And I thank all of you so much for your kindness to me, because, wow, I just appreciate it so much. And I love you. I say it all the time, anytime I'm up here, which thankfully isn't very often, but I appreciate you all so much, because you are my family. You really are. You're family to me. And you've been family. You've been aunts and uncles and grandparents to my kids and cousins and all of that. And I cannot tell you how much that means and how much I appreciate it. And this is so thoughtful. There's so much cool stuff in this box. So thank you so much. I love you all. God bless you. I wish I could tell you how much I love you. Thank you.
Before our mothers are seated, would you stand right now and join me in praying a blessing upon them? I pray the Lord makes his face to smile upon them. Let's pray together. Lord, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for these precious women of God, these precious mothers, grandmothers, and great-grandmothers, and great-great-grandmothers, some watching by way of live stream, some here in person. God, I pray, open the windows of heaven in a special way, more special than you've ever done before. Rain down love and affection, blessings economic strengthening, health, life, abundance of life and strength upon these precious women, these precious and godly mothers. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we declare it to be. Amen, amen. Let's show appreciation to them again as they are seated today. Amen. All right, God bless you. Let's worship with Sister Joseph as she ministers in song. And I do want to say, I've posted about it on Facebook, both about my precious mother and also Happy Mother's Day to my precious wife. My goodness, what a wonderful woman of God and what a precious blessing she has been to me and to our family and to this church and to the kingdom of God. And a precious West Virginia friend who has been for many decades pastoring out in Missouri, Brother Mangus. When I posted a Mother's Day honor and tribute to my wife this morning, he commented under it and he said, marrying her was the wisest thing you have ever done. And I think that's probably true. Amen. Let's worship with her as she ministers in song today.
I get very nervous and fidgety on this day and anytime anybody's saying nice things about me because I mess up a lot. And I was thinking about this morning because I was struggling, honestly, with music for today because I knew many of you would be here and I wanted it to be, right. And I always pray about it, and it's like the Lord just said, it's okay because they know you're not perfect, and that's for sure. And sometimes people say nice things about you, and that's really sweet and nice, and it's very much appreciated. But honestly, the truth is, when I look at how much He did for me and how much I have yet to do, and, not things, just, I can never repay Him. And so I'm going to sing the song that you know, but it's called Your Love Amazes Me. And I know it's not particularly the Mother's Day song, but that's what was on my heart this morning, because it's not that I or you are so perfect or the things that we do are ever going to be enough, but it's His love that really makes the difference. Pray for me. People look and say, you're faithful, everything you should be. They say that you have been there when it counted. You've given unselfishly. Lord, I hear what they're saying, and for a moment I believe. But then my heart cries out in honesty, no more than I've given. I'm amazed you still love me. It's hard to imagine how you can see past all of my inconsistency. And every holy intervention is just another grace extension. No more than I've given. Your love amazes me. I've never questioned one time your love, Lord. It's so apparent to me. Even when I was down, you were with me. You've loved consistently. It's just when I start comparing all you give to what I gave,
questioned one time your love, Lord. It's so apparent to me. And even when I was down, you were with me. You've loved consistently. It's just when I start comparing all you give to what I gave, I'm overwhelmed with wonder, and I have to say, no more than I've given. I'm amazed you still love me. It's hard to imagine how you can see past all of my inconsistencies, and every holy intervention is just another grace extension. No more than I've given. Your love amazes me. Every holy intervention is just another grace extension. No more than I've given. Your love amazes me.
We bring you a message, a Mother's Day message from the Word of the Lord today. And so, again, showing that token of honor, very important token of honor to the reading of the Word of the Lord. I'd like to ask you if you will rise in honoring the Word of the Lord today as I read from Exodus chapter 16, and reading there very briefly just to start off, only the 33rd verse. Later, I plan to read extensively from this chapter, but for right now, just as a launching place, Exodus chapter 16 and verse 33, the word of the Lord says, "And Moses said unto Aaron, Take a pot and put an omer full of manna therein, and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations." Amen. Now, at first, my title may not make sense. I have a title and a subtitle today, and I'd like to ask y'all if you'll go ahead and put the graphic up there. It may not make sense, but give me a little time to bring it around. My title is The Balancing Act, Making Life Work with Brown Bananas. Amen. God bless you. Before we're seated, let's give a great shout of praise to the Lord. Amen. As you know, Sunday morning is Sunday school time around Christian Apostolic Church. And so today is kind of a special case. We're kind of doing something that is kind of halfway Sunday school and halfway Mother's Day preaching. But during this, at least today and next Sunday, not doing Sunday school classrooms. And I think the logic there is sound, which is that if one kid happens to come to church infected and you put him in a room with other kids, probably not a good idea. Let him sit on the pew with his family, and if he's going to infect anybody, they were already living with him anyhow. We don't want anybody to be infected that isn't already infected. We don't want anybody to be exposed that isn't already exposed, and all of that. And so, but I do want to get together with my wonderful son, Kyron, and plan for something special for children next Sunday. So what I'd like to do, and he and I will be getting together to talk about it, but what I'd like to do is to have him work with our Sunday school teachers to plan something children's ministry related for next Sunday morning. Since we're not having Sunday school classes next Sunday morning, we could do something. And I, as a grown-up, love getting into kids' church with the kids. And I know you do too. I promise you, Brother Billy Cole did. Anytime Billy Cole saw a kid do anything, it made him smile from ear to ear. I remember one time I was with him in an airport, and an Ocean Spray commercial came on the TV screen in the airport. And Brother Cole went from serious and burdened to gleeful and delighted from just in a split second because of his great joy in looking at the smiling child on that commercial. And if he was here to take part in any of our kids' ministry related things, he would adore it. And certainly I do too, and I know you do. I do want to say thank you to Kyron for the wonderful job that he does. My goodness, what a tremendous drummer he is, but also a great singer, but also a great teacher of the Bible, great Bible study teacher. And we are so thankful to have him with his burden for our children, for your children, and his involvement in kids ministry and in Sunday school. I'm very thankful for all of my children. Their giftings are different. Their personalities are different. Some of them are extroverted, some are introverted. Well, guess what? In our marriage, my wife is extroverted and I'm introverted. There's nothing wrong with that. But we are so thankful for all of our children. The featured verse that I read tells this in honor of that godly mother, that godly wife. Her children rise up and call her blessed. And in regard to that, it's not just that they stand up on Mother's Day or that they come in on a certain birthday or come in on some certain special occasion and bless her with their words. It's that by living their godly life becomes an everyday fulfillment of that occasional token of standing up. And I'm so thankful for all of our children, their giftings and their livelihood. By doing that, they rise to call her blessed. And certainly she and I are blessed, and we're so thankful for that. The concept of the manna given by the Lord to the Hebrew people in the account given in Exodus is one of the most interesting. And someone mentioned recently that the book of Exodus, and let me just say that Exodus has now been touched on or preached from in our live stream services in recent weeks quite often. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think the Lord is leading us there for a reason. Exodus is filled with great lessons that we can learn. And in particular, just that whole overall message, the word Exodus literally is a reference to the fact that God helped the people to exit out of slavery, to exit out of Egypt. And they basically, their message was, he brought us out, and we're coming out because he brought us out. And that's a great message with regard to this stinking COVID-19 thing, is he brought us out and we're coming out. And not only that, but that in their coming out, they came out into a period of time where they did not have a normal supply chain for their sustenance. And can somebody say amen, that as we come out of the other side of this COVID-19 quarantine, our supply chain has been affected. They're not letting more than 361 people at a time go into this huge Walmart. And when you get in there, they're limiting how much you can buy. And if you try to order online, some of the websites are limiting how many items you can, how much kilograms or pounds you can ship in your order in a single order. And when you get in there, sometimes the shelves are bare of what you want. And we're being told that farmers and ranchers are in a terrible place where they can't get the meat butchered. They can't get the meat processed at a processing plant because all the processing plant employees have been sent home, and farmers are looking at this dire and drastic possibility of having to waste all of their food, all of their harvest of meat, we're not just impacted right now. Our supply chain is going to be impacted in a rolling and rippling manner going into the future for some time. And in this, I see a parallel between us and the Hebrew children coming out of Egypt. They had no supply chain. But God took care of them. And he sent manna from heaven. And my message to you today is I'm asking you and directing you and counseling and encouraging and exhorting you in Jesus' name. Move from fear to faith. God is going to help us. He already has, and he is, and he will. Amen. And so I want to direct your attention to this passage in Exodus about the manna. It is so interesting. Now, in a few moments, I'm going to be reading that whole 16th chapter, and I'm going to read it from the New International Version, and I'll ask you to follow along in your King James Version. We'll probably show the King James Version on the screen, but I do want to make a few preparatory comments before I get to reading that chapter from the Bible. I want to give you a little bit of history and a little bit of context, because walking by faith is a balancing act between my own hard work and my trust in God. Well, that's what the whole COVID-19 thing is. We're doing our best to work to spread the disease, but we're trusting God to stop the spread of the disease. That everything about faith, there is a balancing act between that inward faith and that sign of obedience or work that goes along with it. And so we balance our effort with our trust of Him. And what we see is that practically everything wonderful and productive that we have gifted to us comes in a cooperation between God and men. The Bible itself, we couldn't have a Bible without God giving it to us. But guess what? We also couldn't have the Bible without the prophets that He used to give us the words. There was a cooperative effort between those holy preachers, those holy priests and prophets and holy kings of God that spoke as they were moved by the Holy Ghost. So we see the input of God cooperating with the work of man gave us the Bible. And in reality, everything that we do, even in the remission of sins, there's a cooperation. God gives the gift of remission of sins, but He requires an obedient faith participation of the new convert, and that new convert has to step up and participate by appropriating unto themselves the gift of repentance and the gift of water baptism. And then at the gift of water baptism, we see the church, human beings in the church, cooperating with God and cooperating with the new convert. And so the church is doing the water baptism. The new convert is receiving the water baptism. And God is giving the remission of sins that is completed at the end of a process of repentance and water baptism. And so this cooperation between man and God is seen again and again and again, over and over. And we will see that this cooperation between God and men is seen in the account, the biblical account of the Hebrew people with regard to manna. And I mentioned Brother Billy Cole a few moments ago. I want to just mention to you that there were two books produced, one in which a preacher friend of his simply took his teachings and his sermons and transcribed them into book form. And that one is called Teachings by Billy Cole. It's out of print. The family has asked me to help them get it back in print, and I've done quite a bit of work on it. I do need to do some more, but our goal is to get that one back in print. But I also, my wife and I sat down on many, many occasions, deliberately and intentionally, at the repeated request of Brother and Sister Cole, to help them get their life story in print. We sat with them for many occasions, interviewing them and carefully recording. We audio recorded and typed. We typed while they were talking and audio recorded and made handwritten notes as they were talking. Many sittings, and over a course of 3 years worth of work, produced the book that is still in print today called The Life and Ministry of Billy and Shirley Cole. And Brother Cole had such wisdom. There are little scriptures that are so easy for us to forget. When people are involved, and anything God is going to do for us that's going to be good, it's going to involve people. You understand, God gets you to heaven, not by isolating you alone with Him, but by putting you in a body of believers with other people. I call it God's rock polisher. Because a rock polisher, you put a lumpy, hard, sharp, that will hurt you rock in with other hard, sharp, hurt you rocks, and they grind on each other and they polish each other until they make each other smooth. I think that's what the church is. Some of you are frustrating. And for some of you, I'm frustrating. I get that. We all got little sharp places on us that need rubbed down. And the wonderful compliment that Sister Colombo paid to our First Lady today, that Sister Joseph doesn't come with a harsh word, that's because she's been in the rock polisher a long time. But we forget little Bible verses because everything that we do that is involved with God's cooperation with us, it involves the cooperation of people. And anytime people are in the mix, there is going to be problems. There's going to be offenses. There's going to be frustration. There's going to be pain. There's going to be annoyance. There's going to be all manner of burdens. Because where people are, there's problems. But where people are, there's the strength and the blessing and the intellect and the creativity of those. Everybody brings with them a mixed bag of blessing and cursing. Everybody brings with them a mixed bag of strengths and weaknesses, of great creativity and great annoyance. And with regard to this, Brother Billy Cole would often call to our remembrance that scripture about the ox. And the Bible teaches, and Brother Cole would paraphrase. He would quote that scripture and then he would paraphrase for it. You can't gain the strength of the ox unless you're willing to deal with some poo in the stall. And you have to clean up some poo. But in exchange for the great strength you get from that ox, it makes it worth it. Ask the farmer with his animals if he would rather not have the animals and not have to clean up the poo versus have the strength of the animals and have to muck out the stalls. He'll tell you he'd rather muck out the stalls and have the strength of the animal. And so it is that for anybody in the church, there's some stall cleaning. But hopefully you bring your own unique mixture of strength and creativity and dedicated work ethic and all of that to the situation. And hopefully you bring some love and compassion that can balance off the sharp places. Brother Billy Cole would speak with such wisdom, sometimes a very practical wisdom. I remember on one of those occasions when we went to record him and his wife, on several occasions we took elders and elders and their wives with us to go down there. And I remember on one occasion, Elder Archie Price and his wife were with us in one of those sessions where Brother Cole was teaching. And Brother Cole got to telling the story about the hard work that he and his wife did to learn the Thai language, the language of Thailand. It's one of the hardest languages in the history of mankind, one of the most difficult for a non-Thai person to learn. He told that a brilliant man with a genius-level intellect who had a PhD and multiple degrees, in frustration that he could not learn to conjugate a verb in Thai, he broke his pencils and fled from the classroom. And Brother Cole and Sister Cole dedicated themselves, and Brother Cole began to illustrate how difficult the Thai language is. And he said the word cow about 7 or 8 times, and every time he said it, it had a different meaning. He said there's cow, and there's cow, there's cow, there's cow, and all of these different ways he said it had a different meaning. He said that one means this, and this one means that, and that one means that, and that one means that. And we realized how hard it was to learn. And Brother Archie Price was trying to make notes, and he looked up at me and said, "How would you spell that?" And Brother Cole said, C-O-W. I thought you said he was a school teacher. So he quickly wrote C-O-W. Yeah, as soon as Brother Cole said that, he laughed so big. He would laugh until he could not breathe. He would laugh until no sound was coming out, and he was simply slumped back in the chair convulsing. And at that time, his face would actually show pain, even though he was getting great enjoyment. And his grandchildren called that Papa doing the hurt laugh. And they would come running. Quick, Papa's doing the hurt laugh. Come running and see. So by way of illustration, I want to take you back in time. Back to when I was a very skinny, young, single young man working at my first job. My very first job was at a Christian, it was initially a Christian chain of supermarket stores spread across several states in the South called Brookshire's. And prior to that time, they had always been closed on Sunday and had always refrained from selling liquor. And as I was getting my job with them, my first job with them as a cashier, it was right about the time that managements were changing hands and new views were coming in, and slowly, one by one, at the discretion of the managers, the stores were shifting over where they were opening on Sunday and beginning to sell liquor. And that sad transition happened at that store while I was employed there. But before that, there was kind of a wonderful period when the manager of that store happened to be a Baptist preacher. He was a Baptist evangelist and a very wonderful man. He wanted to be so careful to make sure that when he called over the microphone for a damp mop in aisle 13, that no one thought he was cursing. And so he would say, we need a damp mop in aisle 13, just to make sure that no one misunderstood. He was a wonderful man. And I remember the very first day of my very first job at Brookshire's grocery store in Shreveport, Louisiana, that boss, that very kind gentleman, that store manager, that Baptist evangelist and preacher took me on a one-on-one tour of the grocery store. And our very first stop was the produce section. You know, you walk in the store and there's the cash registers as people are coming out, and you get your cart and you turn to the right, and the very first thing you do, it's the idea of grocery store planners to pre-chart your path. And what they want to do is start you in produce, and then they want to have you zigzag in maze-like fashion to get to the most essentials, which is the meat and the bread. They put the meat and the bread and the soda pop and the chips and the cookies in places where you have to walk past other stuff to get to it. They do all kind of clever things. They'll take an item and put it on the end cap, the end of an aisle, and you think, oh my goodness, this is a special deal because they put it on the end of an aisle. And it's the same price that it was before they put it on the end of the aisle. They just did all kind of big signage around it and made it look special. They do all kind of tricks. They put stuff that woos the attention of children on the low shelves where the kids are, so that the kids will get it and drop it in the buggy, hoping Mama don't notice. Now, I know that's not proper grammar, hoping that Mama doesn't notice, but the kids are saying, I hope Mama don't notice. She took me to the very first stop, and it was the produce section, and there in the produce section, he said something as I looked over the exotic items and produce that I didn't even know the name of what it was, but some of it I knew. I knew what potatoes and onions and bananas were, but as he looked at this mixture, this eclectic mixture of wonderful produce, he said something very profound, and he said it in a very matter-of-fact tone. He said, look out across all of this wonderful goodness. He said, everything here is in the process of going bad. Now, he was not telling me that to imply that it's just hopeless, so let's give up and go home. And he also was not telling me that to imply, oh, but who cares? There's plenty more where that came from. If it all goes bad, no problem, we'll just get some more in. The truth of his statement and the power of understanding it was in realizing the balance that was called for. The fruits and the veggies, while they are a great blessing from God, who is surely willing to send more, they don't have a long shelf life, like something like a chunk of pure gold. And they cost a lot to plant and to grow and to harvest and to sort and to prepare and to package and to transport and to display and to sell. We could not afford to treat it as worthless, and we also could not afford to treat it to be something as valuable as gold. The whole process of that store and its employees and the families who depended on those employees and all of the customers, the good eating and decent life success of all the families and all that the store served, all depended on a right balance in how we valued the produce and the other items in the store, and how that careful valuation led to proper handling. He later told me this: the average profit margin in the entire grocery store industry at that time was only 1%. The bananas arrived to the store while they were still quite green. Yet if we put them out for sale while they were green, they would not sell very well. And that would be a waste of precious shelf space that could be moving something that sells better. The customer does not want to have the bananas at home for a long, long time before they get ripe enough to eat. So if we put the bananas out for sale after they've been yellow for a while, the customers, which are usually women, usually mothers, mostly mothers, would be able to tell that they will soon be brown, and they won't want to buy them. And so we will miss the very narrow window of desirability. They would not sell very well then either. So you couldn't put the bananas out too early, and you couldn't put the bananas out too late. There was a balance required. There was a tiny magical window of time when the bananas needed to be put out for sale. Now in the back, where only the employees go, there were color charts that were put up back there to make sure the employees knew exactly what color ranges of barely green and mostly yellow were the perfect timing to put the bananas out for sale. Bananas that were too soon or too late meant that precious shelf space did not perform as well as it could. And when you only have a 1% profit margin, you cannot afford to make inefficient use of shelf space. Say that 3 times fast. Now, colorblind people can do lots of great jobs really well. But colorblind people really don't need to be produce guys at a grocery store. Men and women have strengths that are different from their counterparts. Among the women, practically all seem to have the potential to develop some key strengths that are seen in moms. However, motherhood seems to really bring it out. If you just go to Google and you type these words, balancing act, women, moms, mothers, you will be led to a practically endless stream of really interesting and helpful articles about women juggling their home life and their work life. Now, that in itself is a very admirable effort, but I marvel more at how godly women put their home life, their marriage, and their parenting as the top priority, and yet manage to pull off a balancing act that is literally biblical in its epicness. And there's a kind of a motif in the Holy Scriptures about that balancing act. Philippians chapter 4, verses 5 through 7 says, let your moderation be known unto all men. The Lord is at hand. Be careful for nothing. In other words, be anxious for nothing. But in everything, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passeth all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Let me read that from the New International Version. Let your gentleness, it's really what Sister Colombo was saying about my precious wife. Now, if you push anybody hard enough, you can push them past their gentleness. And sadly, over the years, on occasions, I've pushed her hard enough to get her past the gentleness. But it takes a lot of pushing, and it's unwarranted. Let your gentleness be evident to all. The Lord is near. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. I'm just going to tell you this today, flat-footed and full of faith. That will work in a COVID-19 quarantine, disrupted supply chain situation. Life is often about proportions. It's about portion size, and it's simultaneously about how much we plan and scrimp and save for the future, and yet on the other side, how much we just relax and have faith and trust God that it will all work out. Jesus had interesting things to say about this. On one occasion, he was accosted, "Hey, why do your disciples not fast?" And he said, "Well, why would they fast while the bridegroom is with them? You feast when the bridegroom is with them." Now, Brother Cole wasn't against fasting, but there were occasions when he knew what was called for was celebration, not fasting. He said, somebody's got to fast and pray, and somebody's got to feast and believe. There's a time for everything. There's a season for everything. And we balance how much we scrimp and save versus how much we relax and splurge. We balance how much we work hard and how much we're trusting. It's a balance. We balance how much we trust God that it will all work out and don't sweat the small stuff. And it's all small stuff. We find scriptures on one hand that tell us to count the cost and plan ahead and plan carefully and consider the ant thou sluggard and don't be a sluggard and work hard in the on season so you can eat well in the off season and labor with your hands so you can have to eat and have to give to those that are suffering. Yet on the other hand, we find scriptures encouraging us to trust God and don't worry about what you're going to eat and don't worry about what you're going to wear and don't worry about how your needs are going to meet. And some of these admonitions come straight from the mouth of Jesus. So which is it? Are we supposed to worry or not worry? Are we supposed to work or are we supposed to have faith? The answer is a little bit of both. So which is it? Work and prepare, relax and trust God. Somehow the answer is both. There's actually a sweet spot right in the middle in which we actually somehow do both. And we're learning this in all of our ministry work. We scrimp and save every dollar and we count the cost. If somebody ever comes to you frustrated because Pastor Joseph spent too much on a certain project, question their motives. Chances are I spent somewhere along the lines of 1/10 of what they thought I spent. I put in a new system with cameras. You can't believe how hard I shopped. And I bought used cameras at a fraction of their cost and their value. And I'm that way about everything. I'm tighter than bark on a tree. We scrimp and we save every dollar and we count the cost and we're careful, yet along the way, we're always trusting God for His help. It doesn't matter how much we scrimp and save. It doesn't matter how careful the prophets were. If God didn't get involved, we wouldn't have a Bible. And it doesn't matter how much we save in any kind of project. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. It takes a partnership of both. And somehow, even though we scrimp and save and work hard, the Lord just keeps on pouring his blessings out. We keep working hard. We keep planning hard. We keep fundraising fastidiously. We keep generously putting our shoulder to the wheel, but we still keep needing his help. Not any work that I do, not any saving, not any planning, not any counting of the costs that I do is me saying, God, I don't need your help. In the midst of it all, I find places where I fall to my knees and say, Lord, I can't even walk without you holding my hand. If we worked without trusting God, we would miss out on his blessings. And we would no doubt be unable to reach any worthy goals. And if we didn't count the cost and we didn't work hard, claiming that we were just going to trust God on it, we would violate a whole set of verses, and likely we would wind up without either the product of the blessing or the product of the hard work. Just think about this. What if Moses had said, well, I'm not going to do the hard work of building an ark. I'm just going to trust God. He would have drowned. Brother Billy Cole would tell this story as a joke. The city slicker came out to visit the farm. As he stood looking at the beauty of that farm, he raised his hands and said, look what God hath wrought. And the farmer slipped up behind him and said, true, but you should have seen what it looked like when God had it to himself. In everything that truly matters, we instill both our work and his work together. Ask any godly couple that's been married for several decades and has a blessed family. Ask them if they could have done it without hard work. And then ask them if they could have done it without God's help. And the answer is the same to both questions. So that having been said, I want to direct your attention to the scripture about the manna. Exodus chapter 16, New International Version. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt. In the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death. Then the Lord said to Moses, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way will I test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the sixth day, they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days. So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, in the evening you will know that it was the Lord who brought you out of Egypt. And in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we that you should grumble against us? Moses also said, you will know that it was the Lord when he gives you meat to eat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You're not grumbling against us, but against the Lord. Then Moses told Aaron, say to the entire Israelite community, come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling. Ouch. This is way worse than being called to the principal's office. While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked toward the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. And the Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. That evening, quail came and covered the camp. And in the morning, there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, what is it? Every time I read this Bible passage, it reminds me of a candy bar called a whatchamacallit. Because the English word manna comes from the original Hebrew that literally means, what is it? That's what they called it. What you eating? I'm eating some what is it? It's like saying, I'm eating some whatchamacallit. They said to each other, what is it? For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, it is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Everyone is to gather as much as they need. Take an omer for each person. Now, if I skip to verse 36 at the end of the chapter, it says, an omer is a tenth of an ephah. Well, that just answered everything, didn't it? I now know how much it is. If only I knew what an ephah was. You got to dig in if you want to learn these measurements. He said, take an omer per person. Take an omer for each person that you have in your tent. The Israelites did as they were told, and some gathered much, some little. And when they measured it by the omer, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Kind of like tithing. Some people make a lot of money, and some people don't make a lot of money. But when you measure it by the tithing, everybody's equal. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. I'll just pause here and say, if you make a lot of money and you give a token of 10% plus offerings, that's some additional percentage. But you give a tithing. The word tithe means 1/10. I don't know if maybe it made me think of it when it said an omer is 1/10 of an ephah. It could have very easily said an omer is a tithe of an ephah. If you give a token of tithing, it doesn't matter whether that tithe is on a big income or a little income. In the eyes of God, you qualified as a tither. And the church is warned against showing favoritism to the rich, just as the justice system is commanded not to show favoritism to the poor. This is a problem with today's modern concept of social justice. We're supposed to ignore their crime because they supposedly come from a bad background. The Bible warns against that. The justice system doesn't play favorites, just as the church doesn't. I hold no more regard for a wealthy person who gave 10% than I do a poor person who gave 10%. I view you both as equal. And God does also. Everyone, verse 18, everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. Then Moses said to them, no one is to keep any of it until morning. Use it or lose it. However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. I'm glad I'm not unique. Brother Billy Cole used to say this and laugh. He would say, people falsely accuse us of being a cult. My Lord, this is not a cult. In a cult, everybody does what the leader says. Around here, nobody does what I say. And then he would laugh. Well, apparently we're not in some exclusive club because that's what they did to Moses. Not everybody, but some. Some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Well, I'm glad I'm also not alone there, because there's been times I was angry with someone. Each morning, everyone gathered as much as they needed. And when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the sixth day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers per person. That's 2 tithes of an ephah for anyone that's keeping check, keeping score. 2 omers for each person. And the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said unto them, this is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning. So they saved it until morning as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. Eat it today, Moses said, because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will not be any. Isn't that amazing? The maggots knew whether it was a Sabbath day or not. It's astounding. What a great miracle. And whatever forces God employed to bring this manna to them, those forces knew whether it was a Sabbath day or not. The Bible says, nevertheless, some people went out on the 7th day to gather it, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day, he gives you bread for two days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the 7th day. No one is to go out. So the people rested on the 7th day. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It was like white coriander seed and tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, this is what the Lord has commanded. Take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so they can see the bread I gave you to eat in the wilderness when I brought you out of Egypt. So Moses said to Aaron, take a jar and put an omer of manna in it, then place it before the Lord to be kept for the generations to come. And folks, do you realize that among the tiny list of items that were inside the Ark of the Covenant, that pot of manna was one of those few items? And that pot of manna that couldn't even keep through the heat of the day, the sun would melt it where it was. Somehow this pot of manna in this Ark of the Covenant was preserved down throughout their generations. Just like the body of Jesus Christ, the bread of life, did not rot or decompose while he was buried in the tomb, so this bread from heaven did not rot while it was a witness for all generations. Wow. If that doesn't light your fire, your wood's wet. But the T.F. Tenney would say that. He would also say, if that doesn't turn your crank's broken. And the Lord commanded Moses, as the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron put the manna with the tablets of the covenant law so that it might be preserved. The Israelites ate manna 40 years. Somebody said, how long is God going to provide for us while our supply chain is messed up? He took care of them 40 years. I think he's not going to have any problem taking care of us while we get through this. I'm just going to pause and give God some praise by faith for taking care of us. Oh, hallelujah. Hallelujah, Jesus. Praise God. Until they came to a land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. An omer is 1/10 of an ephah. So there appeared for them a blend of both work needed to feed themselves and even some advanced planning to prepare for the future before a Sabbath. But all of this was in the midst of continually and totally trusting God for their sustenance. If you took away their hard work and their valuing of the blessing that they had available, they would have gone hungry. And yet, if you took away the Lord's hand in it all, they would have gone hungry. The secret to their surviving their sojourn in the wilderness was a balancing act of both their participation and their trust in God for his participation. This is a balancing act that is crucial to every believer for genuine success in life. If we want to live the abundant life, then this is a lesson we must learn. If you look at the image on the screen, it's some bananas that have become too brown for some. Now, when I've been real hungry, I've eaten a banana that looked exactly like that. And I found out that when I peeled that brown skin off, it depended on whether the meat inside was bruised or not. Now, if that banana had been sitting on a hard bar, it would have a bruised brown place inside. But if that banana had been cradled carefully, that skin could turn brown, but that meat inside would still be white and good. But there's something that happens in the chemical processes of the banana meat as it ripens. It gets sweeter and sweeter and sweeter. And I remember my precious mama saying to me, I don't like to eat them when they get too ripe because they're too sweet. I'm just going to tell you, a lot of personality traits are really baked into us from the start. I know I've gone a little while here, but if you'll just pardon me, it's been a long time since I had a crowd to preach to. I just want to mention this little story to you. This godly first lady over here, when she was a wee little tiny thing, this is what her mother said. We would put her on a blanket, a clean blanket on the floor with a couple of toys to play with. And when somebody would reach for her, she would check out their hands and their fingers to see if they were clean. And if they didn't meet her approval, she would shy away and didn't want them to touch her. And if she checked out their hands and their hands were clean, then she would reach for them and she would let them take her. And she considered that little tithe, that little blanket, she considered that little spot clean and sanctified, but the rest of that floor was considered filthy. It didn't matter how clean it was, she considered it off limits. And if during her play with that toy fell from her hand and rolled off that blanket, that toy was dead to her. If that toy landed on the blanket and didn't roll off, she'd reach and pick it back up and keep playing with it. But if it rolled off, she wouldn't even think about getting off that blanket to go after it. She was on a safe zone. That was baked into her precious little tiny brain when she was too young to even talk. Isn't that cool? There are ultrasounds showing that baby, instead of sucking their right thumb, sucks their left thumb. And when that baby's born left-handed and sucking their left thumb. There are ultrasounds showing that the baby didn't suck the thumb, but the two fingers in the middle of their hand. And after that baby was born, and whenever they would want to suck on something or teeth, they would chew on those two fingers instead of their thumb. Now, there's some choices we make, but there's some cool personality traits that are just baked into us from the start. And among those are issues of introversion and extroversion. There's some stuff about introversion that's baked in from the start. And a person who's an introvert, they can be in a crowd, they can be the life of the party, but it drains their batteries the whole time they're doing it. And they got to get some time alone to recharge. And an extrovert, they can be alone, they can be isolated, they can stay home, but it drains their batteries the whole time. They got to get out in a crowd so they can recharge their batteries. And God put my wife, an extrovert, together with me, an introvert. And she'll come and kiss on me and say, my little hermit. And from a wee little tiny baby, I loved a cookie, but if I had a cookie, I had to have milk with it because it was too sweet. I can't take all that sweetness without something to dilute it and balance it down. I was born that way. You can laugh at me or say whatever you want. I was born that way. I have always needed either a drink of milk or a drink of water to balance off something sweet, or I can't take it. If there's no milk or there's no water, I won't even eat the cookie. I won't even eat it. When I go to eat ice cream, I pour milk on it because it's too sweet without it. A long time back, I stopped drinking full sweet tea and full sweet pop. Now, if I take a sip of pop that hadn't been mixed half and half with water, I go into conniptions. Because it's too sweet, tastes like pure syrup to me. And I remember my mama saying, I don't like to eat the bananas when they get too ripe because they're too sweet. And I think, now I know where I got it. I got it from her. But many godly mothers have known instinctively. For example, they know both that the money to buy more bananas will come, and they know that more bananas will be available to buy, but yet they still work hard to value the bananas they have in the house, even to the place of realizing that just because the bananas have gotten brown does not mean that they should be thrown out and wasted. So the industrious, creative woman of God, often a mother, though perhaps not necessarily, knows what to do even with a brown banana. Thank God for banana nut bread. I started to say banana bread, but then I threw in the nut. Because I can eat a banana bread without a nut in it, but it's a waste of banana bread. You got to put a walnut in it to really make it good for me. But there's got to be some water and some milk on hand, or I can't do it. But I say to you, thank God for banana bread. What ways can you think of that your mother balanced both hard work and faith in God? Now, ordinarily on Mother's Day, we would pass around the microphone and let you tell your testimonies. But we're in a time where guidance from headquarters told us not to pass around handheld objects. So we're going to respect that. I thought about making an exception, but we've already made a lot of concessions and exceptions. So I want to ask you to do something special for me. If I'd have been willing to pass a microphone around here today and let you tell something about your mama. If you have a social media page, put that testimony on your social media page and tag me in it, and I'll share it with the church. If you don't have a social media page, but you can email it to me, and I'll share it with the church. And if you don't have social media and you don't have email, if you'll write it down, I'll share it with the church. And that, folks, is the balancing act of how to make life work with brown bananas. Or if I were to put it another way, it's how to make life work in the midst of a COVID-19 mess. It's how to make life work when your grandmama or your mama or your great-grandmama died. It's how to make life work when they laid you off from the job. Whatever it is that you have come to, the Lord can bring you through it. And the old wisdom said he won't bring you to it if he won't bring you through it. So we stand strong by faith. As a matter of fact, I want to ask you to stand with me as a show right now. We stand strong in faith that even during this tough time that we're going through, even during this tough time that America is going through, our trust in God has not wavered. Our trust in God has not diminished. In fact, now is when we need to trust him more than ever. So to America, I say, trust God, work hard, and trust God. It's not an either or, it's both. To our church members, I say the same thing. Trust God while you're working hard. And while you're working hard, trust God. And He will bring us through. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. He's still with us, folks. He's still with us. Let's thank the Lord together. Hallelujah, Amen, amen. Amen. I want y'all to look. I just looked at my phone and it's 11:45. That's right when we normally dismiss. How on earth did that happen? Praise God. Amen. I encourage you, folks, as we go forth into this week, as we go forth into this disrupted supply chain, as we go forth into trying to reopen the state after this COVID-19 thing, go forth in faith and be willing to let God partner with you as you partner with Him. And even God can find a way to bring good out of anything. And all of this mess we're dealing with, it can be just like so much brown bananas that's getting sweeter and sweeter. And God will find a way to bless us through it. He'll find a way to bless us through it. Let's trust Him in Jesus' name. Amen. God bless you as we're dismissed in Jesus' name. Either wave or shake hands or wash hands, but whatever you do, be friendly. Amen. In Jesus' name.